country.
Not backing down. You heard him just this morning on Meet the Press there with Chuck Todd, former CIA Director John Brennan, standing by his claims that he has made that President Trump did commit treason. Brennan speaking out on Meet the Press days after losing his security clearance and getting some pushback over his accusations that when it comes to Trump and Russia, collusion is in plain sight. Those are his words. Joining us now on our panel, Zelina Maxwell, MSNBC political analyst and director of progressive programming for SiriusXM, Evan Siegfried, GOP strategist, as well as Ellie Maxwell. Thank you, Misdal. Thank you for being back as well. Danny Savalas also still on the table. So let's start all the way on the opposite end here, Evan, not politically, just physically here. What do you make of what he said, John Brennan here, and is he credible? Because that's really the question, right? Should he be talking?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, Sarah Huckabee Sanders came to the White House podium on Thursday and said, you know, we're revoking the security clearance because of erratic conduct and behavior. She also said that he was engaging in a series of unfounded and outrageous allegations, wild outbursts on the internet and television. You could literally swap Donald Trump's name with John Brennan's, and it would be the same thing. So they didn't make any sort of case or transparent case to say, hey, John Brennan was abusing that security clearance he had. Maybe he was committing some sort of bad acts, but they didn't. And then the president in a Wall Street Journal interview made it clear that he did this because John Brennan was attacking him personally, and he didn't like that. And while it's not a First Amendment violation, it certainly violates the spirit of the First Amendment. And as a conservative who believes in the Constitution and that presidents shouldn't the presidential powers to retaliate against people, this is absolutely an inappropriate move on the president's part, and it should be called for what it is. So shameful.
So, Zelina, the critics will say, though, it doesn't follow the spirit of the office that John Brennan had held. Right. To make such an accusation, to use such a word, treason.
Well, I think that you have to look at the facts. What he is talking about is the president siding with Vladimir Putin, right? So when he sent out the tweet that said the actions were treasonous, he was talking about something specific. It wasn't a broad accusation. Additionally, I think, you know, this is the deep state conspiracy essentially coming to the fore. This is the bowels of the right-wing internet entering the mainstream conversation and making it so John Brennan is essentially an enemy of Trump's supporters. And so this is him taking an act of personal political retribution in an unprecedented way when what we're dealing with is something very serious. He is ringing an alarm because the president sided with Vladimir Putin after he attacked our country, and we can't forget that.
Senator Ron Johnson said this, Republican from Wisconsin, about what John Brennan has done so far. Let's listen to that first.
I'm not sure there is evidence that anybody's have misused it, but I do believe that former CIA Director John Brennan abused his privilege. When you're an ex-CIA director and you're going on all the cable news shows and acting as partisan as he is and accusing the President of the United States of treasonous behavior, high crimes and misdemeanors, the last time I checked, treason was punishable by death. You've just crossed a line, and so I have no problem that the president pulled his clearance.
Ellie?
Oh, my. We're talking about courtesy. We're talking about courtesy. Not a law. We're talking about courtesy, okay? Donald Trump exists to teach us the difference between laws and norms. If it's a norm, he's going to break it. This is a courtesy that was given to other people. Trump doesn't like courtesy, so he's going to break it. Brennan, the courtesy would be not to call the president a traitor. Of course, the courtesy would be for the president not to be a traitor. So Brennan's breaking his courtesy. Trump's breaking. If it's not a law, it doesn't matter in Donald Trump's world. It's just a norm, like so many, that he's stepped all over.
Well, you know, Ron Johnson
stepping over some laws as well, and so we're going to find out whether Bob Mueller finds
at some point
whether or not there's enough evidence to prove that.
Ron Johnson said that, but then Brennan said more today. And let's listen to what he had to say about collusion.
But what I'm saying is that there is collusion that took place between individuals, Americans and Russians. Whether or not this is going to trigger some type of criminal activity indictment is something else entirely. And I've never put forth any thoughts on conspiracy. But collusion, I don't think Mr. Trump has made a secret of it himself.
So, Danny, we heard a lot in that conversation with the former CIA director on Meet the Press today. They were discussing obstruction of justice, conspiracy as well, and you saw their collusion, and he was making no bones about it.
Of course, they were talking about treason as well. And I'm sorry to turn this into the Merriam-Webster hour, but treason has several meanings, just as do some of these other words. Treason we use colloquially, I can never say that word, but
I gotcha.
You know the word I'm talking about. We use that word to describe treacherous behavior. It doesn't always mean the constitutionally defined crime for which you may be punished with death. Similarly, yes, I mean, you
don't think Brennan meant that then, is what you're saying? You don't think Brennan meant it that way legally? You don't. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that he couldn't have meant that because treason has a very specific statutory definition. It means you are working with or giving aid or comfort to an enemy, a declared enemy. Russia may be a competitor. Russia may be not playing fair. Russia may be liar, liar, pants. Fire, but they are not an enemy as that is defined for the crime of treason. So I think there is no way that John Brennan meant treason as a crime as defined by our statutes. Going forward, as somebody who can observe collusion to some degree, we've said this many, many times. We can focus on the word collusion all we like. The fact that it doesn't have a real significant meaning in the criminal code doesn't mean anything because it might be conspiracy, it might be accomplice liability, it might be attempt liability. There are any number of things that kind of behavior can translate to in our criminal statute.
You did Merriam-Webster and Oxford well, right there. There was
Not
also
colloquially.
Yeah, that's all right. You had to go there again. No, double down on colloquially. To you, Evan, on this, there's also this in the discussion on Meet the Press was how Brennan was saying, yes, I've been approached by lawyers to pursue my legal options. The question might be, should he do this? Has he already had overexposure? And legally, what can he do?
Well, I'm not sure what he personally can do legally. Maybe he could sue the president for defamation. But there is a legal matter here that is being missed by many people. I've spoken to several former prosecutors on the federal level who've said to me that this could be construed by Mueller as a warning shot and an attempt to intimidate potential witnesses because they named other people who are being considered for having their security clearances revoked. And these are people who could end up testifying before a grand jury for Robert Mueller. And if Trump is doing that, that would be a big no-no. Yes, Trump's side would argue that he's doing it in the duties of the office of the president, but this would be a nightmare scenario if Mueller went down that path.
Got to go. Y'all be back, but quickly, what can he do legally? What is in the stable of what Brennan can do here quickly?
Not a lot, only because the Supreme Court has said that these kinds of decisions, revocations of security clearances, are generally not reviewable, but more recent case law leaves it somewhat of an open question. If I had to choose, probably not reviewable by the courts.
All right, great. Great segment. You're all around, so thank you so much for that. When we come back, Omarosa tells MSNBC she has more recordings, and if Robert Mueller needs them, she's going to give it to him. Our discussion on the tale of tapes.
I will turn over all of the things that they need, but I will turn over additional things that I've discovered as I've gone through the 2 years on the campaign. And so I'm here and willing to serve.